Philadelphia, March 27th, 1975. When Evelyn Hartwell stepped across the threshold of the row house on Tasker Street, she didn't yet know that within 10 minutes her hand would tremble so violently the tape recorder would slip from her fingers and clatter onto the linoleum floor. She had come for a human interest story about the 30th anniversary of VE Day. She would leave with a secret that could shatter 5 lives. The 25-year-old reporter for the Philadelphia Inquirer had received the assignment from her editor, Marcus Brennan, a week earlier. Quote, "0," he'd said, tapping ash into an overflowing ashtray. People are tired of the same old victory speeches. Give them a real person. Here's a list of veterans who came home under unusual circumstances. Wesley Dalton was third on the list. Returned 1946 without identification papers, recognized by wife through distinguishing marks. Married 35 years, happy family. Perfect material. Evelyn had called ahead. A woman's voice, rough-edged, worn, agreed to the interview. The row house smelled of boiled cabbage and furniture polish. A woman answered the door, late 50s, thin, with large work-roughened hands and deep lines around pale gray eyes. Irene Dalton. She wiped her palms on a faded apron and gestured Evelyn inside. Quote 4. Evelyn surveyed the room. Typical working-class veterans' home. Braided rug, Philco radio in the corner, photographs in frames crowding a doily-covered side table. She moved closer to examine them. A wedding photo. Young Irene in a simple white dress. A man in a dark suit, serious-faced, strong-jawed. Family pictures. 3 children of varying ages, from teenagers to a young boy. Then, later photos showing 2 more children, much younger. And finally, photos of all 5 children grown, holding babies of their own. A separate photograph stood apart. Military portrait. A man in army uniform, jacket properly buttoned, the combat infantryman badge visible on his chest. Evelyn peered closer. The face resembled the man in the wedding photo. But something nagged at her. She couldn't identify what. The front door opened. Heavy footsteps in the hall. Wesley Dalton entered, removing his cap. The man was about 57, tall, broad-shouldered but stooped, with the calloused hands of a welder. His face was weathered, creased with fine wrinkles, gray eyes beneath thick eyebrows. On his left cheek, a scar, pale and old, running from cheekbone to jaw. Quote 5, he said, extending his hand. Quote 6. His voice was deep, slightly gravelly. Evelyn introduced herself, pulled out her notebook. Wesley sat across from her while Irene brought coffee in mismatched cups. Evelyn began, clicking on the tape recorder. Wesley cleared his throat, rubbed the bridge of his nose. Quote 8. He glanced at his wife. She nodded, but her eyes remained unreadable. Evelyn was writing. Quote 9. Irene spoke first. Quote 10. She touched her own neck. Quote 11. Wesley nodded. Quote 12. Evelyn recorded it, then asked. Wesley thought for a moment. Evelyn nodded, scribbling. It all sounded plausible. Ordinary story of a returned soldier. Then Wesley added, Evelyn looked up. Something pinged in her memory. She couldn't immediately place it. She continued the interview, asking about the children, grandchildren, work at the shipyard. Wesley grew animated talking about the welding bay where he'd worked 29 years. Irene remained quiet, refilling coffee cups. Evelyn asked. Wesley said with pride. Evelyn wrote it down, but something scratched at the back of her mind. She made a mental note to check later. An hour later, Evelyn prepared to leave. She thanked them, promised to send a copy when the article ran. Outside on the sidewalk, it hit her. The timeline didn't work. Wesley said he was wounded at Kasserine Pass in February or March 1943. Kasserine was in February 43. He claimed to have spent months in hospital, then returned to combat, made it to Germany. But then he mentioned Sherman tanks in France in 44. If he was wounded in February 43 at Kasserine, hospitalized for months, he would have been sent home or reassigned. The 28th Infantry Division that fought at Kasserine didn't participate in the D-Day landings or the France campaign. That was a different theater entirely. The geography and unit movements didn't match. Maybe he transferred units. Got mixed up on details after 30 years? Evelyn decided to verify. The next morning, she went to the Veterans Administration office on Market Street. Her press credentials opened doors. An elderly clerk, Harold Zimmerman, led her to a basement storage room lined with filing cabinets. Harold searched the card catalog, pulled a folder. Evelyn opened it. First page, service record. Name, birth year, everything matched. Birthplace, Philadelphia. Enlisted June 1940. Served. Evelyn scanned down. 28th Infantry Division. Combat record in North Africa, February to March 1943. Then, a red stamp. Underscore, underscore, quote, underscore, 22, underscore, underscore. Evelyn reread it. Then again. Killed. March 18th, 1943. Further in the file, casualty report. Signature of company commander. Underscore, underscore, quote, underscore, 23, underscore, underscore, Joel Levinson. Evelyn wrote down the name, her hand shaking slightly. Underscore, underscore, quote, underscore, 24, underscore, underscore. Harold found another folder. Levinson, Joel Marcus, born March 12, 1919. Enlisted from Pittsburgh, June 1940. Served in the same company as Dalton. Wounded March 19, 1943, the day after Dalton died. Evacuated to Field Hospital in Algiers. Transferred to Stateside Hospital June 1943. Discharged August 1946 due to medical unfitness, permanent injury to right shoulder affecting mobility. Physical description. Height 5 feet 11 inches. Weight 165 pounds. Hair brown. Eyes gray. Distinguishing marks. Scar on left cheek from childhood injury. Birthmark on right side of neck. Evelyn's breath caught. Scar on left cheek. Birthmark on neck. Exactly what Irene had described. But the discharge address line was blank, and there was no photograph in the file. She photographed every page of Levinson's file with her Nikon, then went to look for more information. The Army Medical Records section had additional details. Levinson's hospital records from 1943 to 1946. Extensive documentation of his shoulder injury, multiple surgeries, physical therapy. One note from a psychiatrist dated July 1943. Patient shows signs of severe survivor's guilt following death of close friend in combat. Nightmares, emotional withdrawal, episodes of dissociation. Repeatedly states he should have died instead. Recommend continued observation. Underscore, underscore, quote, underscore, 26, underscore, underscore. Patient refers to deceased friend as brother, though no biological relation exists. States they enlisted together, trained together, promised to look after each other's families if one didn't make it home. Guilt appears to center on perceived failure to fulfill this promise. Quote 27. Statement of Private Joel M. Levinson, March 20th, 1943, Field Hospital, Algeria. On March 18th, 1943, at approximately 1400 hours, our platoon was attempting to break through German positions near Jebel el Guessa. We came under heavy mortar fire. Private Wesley Dalton was 5 yards to my left. I saw a mortar round land directly next to him. He was killed instantly. I saw the impact. Private Horace Pritchard also witnessed this. We had to leave his body when we withdrew. I am certain Private Dalton is deceased. Wesley was my best friend. We enlisted together from Philadelphia. He was from South Philly. I was staying with distant relatives in Pittsburgh at the time. We promised each other we'd look after the other's family if something happened. I need to know if his wife and children are being taken care of. Private Levinson became extremely agitated when recounting this incident and when discussing the deceased's family situation. Required sedation. Appears to have strong emotional attachment to the deceased and feels personal responsibility for family left behind. Recommends psychiatric evaluation. Evelyn photographed the statement, her mind racing. Then she looked for Horace Pritchard's file. Found it. Pritchard, Horace Daniel, born 1920, from Baltimore. Served in same unit as Dalton and Levinson. Killed June 8, 1944 during D-Day landings at Normandy. So Pritchard was dead. The only living witness to Wesley Dalton's death was Joel Levinson, who was now, apparently, living as Wesley Dalton. Evelyn sat in the musty archive room piecing it together. The real Wesley Dalton died March 18, 1943 in Tunisia. He left behind a wife and 3 young sons, Robert, born 1938, age 5 at father's death, Eugene, born 1940, age 3, and Martin, born 1942, less than a year old. Joel Levinson was wounded the next day, March 19, 1943. Hospitalized for 3 years, discharged in August 1946. Then, a man claiming to be Wesley Dalton appears at Irene's door in 1946, is recognized by his scars, and takes up life as a husband and father. And after 1946, 2 more children are born, Dorothy in 1948 and Frank in 1951. Those 2 youngest children couldn't possibly be Wesley Dalton's biological children. He'd been dead for 5 years before Dorothy was born, 8 years before Frank. They had to be Joel Levinson's children, which meant Joel had not only taken Wesley's identity, he'd continued the marriage, fathered children with Wesley's widow, and lived as Wesley for 29 years. But did Irene know? Evelyn spent 3 days thinking about what to do. The journalist in her screamed, "This is a story. Fraud, stolen identity, bigamy, children born under false pretenses, front-page material." But another part of her hesitated. She thought about Irene's face, the photographs of the 5 children, the grandchildren, a family that had existed for 3 decades. What would happen if she published this? Criminal prosecution for fraud? Imprisonment? The marriage invalidated? 2 of the children discovering their father wasn't who they thought? The 3 older children learning the man who raised them wasn't their biological father? And Irene? Did Irene know? That question gnawed at Evelyn. She kept returning to it. When Wesley walked through that door in 1946, could Irene really have been fooled? The scar and birthmark matched. But faces change in 3 years of war. Voices deepen, bodies thin or thicken. Heights might match, but mannerisms, habits, the way a man moves, those are harder to fake. Could Irene truly not have noticed anything different? Or had she known and chosen to accept it? Evelyn decided she had to find out. On April 3rd, she called the Dalton house. Irene answered. "Mrs. Dalton, this is Evelyn Hartwell. I need to speak with you. Alone. It's important. Wesley's at work until 6. Come at 3. Evelyn arrived at 3 sharp. Irene opened the door, face drawn, eyes wary. "Come to the kitchen." They sat at a worn formica table. Irene folded her hands, waiting. Evelyn spoke carefully. "Mrs. Dalton, I've been researching your husband's military service. I've found some inconsistencies." "What kind?" "The man you married in 1940, Wesley Raymond Dalton, was killed in Tunisia on March 18, 1943. There are official records, witness statements. The army declared him dead." Irene's face didn't change. Her hands remained folded. Evelyn continued. "The man who came home to you in 1946 had the same physical marks, the scar, the birthmark, but I believe he's actually Joel Marcus Levinson, who served with your real husband and witnessed his death. Joel was wounded the day after Wesley died. He was hospitalized for 3 years, then discharged in 1946. That same year, a man appears at your door claiming to be Wesley. How much do you know? Enough to write a story that would destroy this family. Are you going to? That depends on what you tell me. Did you know? I didn't know at first. When he walked through that door in July 1946, I thought he was Wesley. The scar was right. The birthmark was exactly where it should be. He was the right height. He knew things, where we'd met, our wedding day, the boys' names and birthdays. I was so grateful to have him back, I didn't question it. When did you realize? About 6 months later. Little things. The way he held a fork. Wesley was left-handed. This man was right-handed. He tried to hide it, switch hands when he noticed me watching. But I noticed. The way he smiled. Different. His handwriting. The way he walked. Wesley had a slight limp from a childhood injury. This man didn't. And then, she paused. There was a night, maybe 8 months after he came home, he talked in his sleep. Called out, "Wesley, Wesley, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." I asked him about it next morning. He went pale, said he'd been dreaming about a friend who died in the war. Wouldn't say more. But you didn't confront him? No. Why not? Because I had 3 sons to feed. Because my real husband was dead and wasn't coming back. Because this man, whoever he was, treated those boys like they were his own blood. He worked 12-hour shifts at the shipyard, brought home every penny of his paycheck, never once raised a hand to me or the children. He was a good father. Her voice cracked. Better than the real Wesley ever was, if I'm being honest. The real Wesley wasn't good to you? Irene returned to the table, sat down heavily. Wesley was a drinker. Not every day, but when he drank, he got mean. He'd slap me around, tell me I was worthless. Never hit the boys, thank God, but they heard him yelling at me, heard me crying. Robert still remembers some of it. He was 5 when Wesley left for the war. When Wesley's death notice came in May of '43, I cried. But if I'm honest, part of me was relieved. I'd get widow's benefits. I'd raise the boys alone. And I'd never have to flinch when I heard footsteps coming up the stairs. And when this other man showed up? When Joel showed up, I figured out his real name eventually, found an old letter he'd hidden in the back of a drawer. I made a choice. I could turn him in, lose everything, watch my boys go to foster care while I tried to survive on a widow's pension that wasn't enough to feed 3 growing children. Or I could accept what fate had given me. A kind man who wanted to be a father to children who weren't his. You chose to lie. I chose to survive. Irene's voice hardened. And I chose to give my boys a real father, not the ghost of a mean drunk. Judge me if you want, but don't you dare tell me I was wrong. Does he know that you know? I think so. We've never spoken about it directly, never said the words out loud. But sometimes, late at night, I'll wake up and see him awake too, staring at the ceiling. I think he's waiting for the knock on the door, the police, the military investigators, or for me to finally say something. She looked at Evelyn. Are you the knock on the door? I don't know yet. What do you want from me? The truth, all of it. Why would a man take another man's identity? How did he know enough about Wesley to fool you? Irene was quiet for a moment. Then, all right, but promise me one thing. Don't publish anything until I've talked to him. He deserves that much. He's been a good husband to me for 29 years. Whatever he was before that, whatever his real name is, he's earned the right to tell his own story. Evelyn agreed. That evening, after Wesley came home from the shipyard, Irene told him about the conversation. Evelyn wasn't there, but Irene recounted it later, and Wesley, Joel, confirmed it. Joel had gone pale, sat heavily in his chair, hands trembling, said nothing for a long time. Finally, "How long have you known?" "Long enough." "Why didn't you say anything?" __, quote _ 68 __. Why didn't you? They looked at each other across 29 years of shared deception. Joel stood, Went to the bedroom. He returned carrying an old shoebox, the cardboard soft with age. He set it on the kitchen table and lifted the lid. Inside were letters. Dozens of them. Yellowed envelopes addressed to Private Joel M. Levinson in cramped handwriting. The return address? Private Wesley R. Dalton. Irene picked up the first one, postmarked October 1942. Dear Joel, boot camp is hell, but at least we're going through it together. I don't think I'd have made it through that last 20-mile march if you hadn't kept talking to keep my mind off the blisters. You're a good friend, better than I deserve. I got a letter from Irene yesterday. She's struggling with the boys. Robert's acting up in school, Eugene won't sleep through the night, and the baby's colicky. My allotment check helps, but it's not enough. She's working at the textile mill, but they're cutting hours. I feel like a bastard for leaving them. But what choice did I have? The draft notice came and I went. Sometimes I wonder if they'd be better off without me. I wasn't much of a husband even before the war. Drank too much, yelled too much. Irene deserves better. Anyway, thanks for listening to me ramble on Night Watch. You're the only one who knows about all this. Your friend, Wes__quote_72_Joel. We're moving into heavy combat tomorrow. Word is the Germans are dug in deep and it's going to be bloody. I have a bad feeling about this one. Can't shake it. I need to tell you something. If I don't make it back, and I don't think I will, I need you to promise me something. Go to Philadelphia, find Irene. Tell her I'm sorry for being such a lousy husband. Tell her she should find someone better, someone who'll treat her right and be a real father to the boys. And if you can, help her out. I know you don't have family waiting for you back home. Your parents are gone. You've got no siblings. Nobody. Maybe you could check on Irene and the boys once in a while. Make sure they're okay. I'm putting your name down as next of kin on my paperwork. If anything happens to me, they'll notify you. I know this is a lot to ask, but you're the best friend I've ever had, Joel. The only person in this world I trust. Take care of my family if I can't. Wes. There was one more letter, written on the back of a C ration box, dated March 18, 1943, the day Wesley died. Joel, quick note before we move out. I'm leaving my dog tags with my gear. They're rubbing my neck raw, and I don't want them rattling when we're trying to be quiet. If something happens and you survive, take them. Take my identity. Become me. Go to Irene. Tell her you're Wesley Dalton come home from the war. She'll believe you if you know the right details, and you know everything. I've told you everything. I know it's crazy. I know it's illegal. But my boys need a father and Irene needs a husband, and you're a better man than I ever was. You have my scar. Same place, same shape. We used to joke about it. You have a birthmark on your neck just like mine. You're the same height, same build, same hair color. In a few years of war and hard living, who's to say what I'd look like anyway? Do this for me, Joel. Be the father I couldn't be. Love my wife the way I should have. Consider it my last request. Your brother in everything but blood, Wesley. Irene set down the letter, tears streaming down her face. Joel watched her, his own eyes wet. I didn't plan it, quote 75, quote. After he died, I was destroyed. Survivor's guilt, the doctors said. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, kept seeing him die over and over. That mortar round landed right between us, 3 feet to the left, and it would have been me instead of him. Why did he die and I didn't? What made my life worth more than his? Quote 76. In the hospital, they asked if I had family to notify. I said no. Both my parents were dead. My father from a mill accident when I was 8, my mother from pneumonia when I was 12. I grew up in an orphanage in Pittsburgh. I had nobody. Quote 77 __. I thought about Wesley's letters, about his boys, Robert, Eugene, baby Martin, about Irene. about how Wesley had asked me, begged me to take care of them. When they discharged me in August '46, I went to Philadelphia. I told myself I just wanted to see if they were okay. I'd check on them, maybe give Irene some money, then leave. I found the house on Tasker Street, stood outside for an hour watching through the window. I saw Irene looking exhausted, skinny, worn to the bone. I saw the boys. Robert was 8, Eugene was 6, Martin was 4. Their clothes were patched, too small. The house was falling apart. I was about to leave when Robert came outside. He saw me standing there and stopped, stared at me. Then he said, "Mister, do you have any food?" An 8-year-old boy begging a stranger for food. I went to a grocery store, bought bread, milk, eggs, some meat, brought it back, knocked on the door. Irene answered. She looked at me and her face went white. She said, "Wesley?" I didn't plan to lie. I swear I didn't. But she looked so hopeful, so desperate, and I had Wesley's letters in my pocket telling me to become him, and I thought, why not? She needs a husband. The boys need a father. Wesley's dead and I'm alive and I owe him everything. So I said, "Yeah, Irene, it's me. I'm home." And she pulled me inside and held on to me like I was a life raft and she was drowning. Irene reached across the table, took his hand. I knew within 6 months, all those little differences. But by then, I didn't care who you really were. You were feeding my children. You were kind to me. You never raised your voice, never raised your hand. You were everything Wesley should have been and never was. "Did you love him?" Joel asked. "Your real husband?" "At first, maybe. When we were young. But he beat that love out of me pretty quick." She squeezed Joel's hand. He looked at her. Irene leaned across the table and kissed him. They sat like that until the streetlights came on outside. The next day, Joel came to Evelyn's apartment. He'd called ahead, asked to meet. He sat on her threadbare sofa, hands clasped between his knees. Up close, Evelyn could see the fear in his eyes. Evelyn agreed. Over the next week, Evelyn met all 5 of Wesley and Irene's children. Robert, 37, a foreman at a machine shop, married with 4 kids of his own. He was the oldest, the one who had vague memories of the real Wesley, the drinking, the yelling, his mother's tears. He spoke about how different his father was after the war. Robert said, Eugene, 35, a postal worker. He described his father teaching him to read, helping with homework, coming to every baseball game. __quote _98 Martin, 33, a mechanic. He had no memories of the real Wesley at all. He was only 8 months old when Wesley died. To him, the father who came home in 1946 was the only father he'd ever known. He taught me everything about cars. Every Sunday we'd work on our old Buick together. Best times of my life. Dorothy, 27, a nurse. She was born in 1948, 2 years after Joel arrived. She spoke about growing up with a father who encouraged her to go to nursing school when most men would have said women should stay home. Dad always told me I could do anything, be anything. He believed in me when nobody else did. Frank, 24, a teacher, born in 1951, the baby of the family. He talked about his father attending his high school graduation, crying with pride. He told me he never finished high school himself, had to quit to work. He made sure all of us graduated, made sure we had opportunities he never had. None of them knew the truth. To them, Wesley Dalton was simply Dad, hardworking, loving, present. Evelyn listened to their stories and felt the weight of what she held in her hands. 2 of these 5 people, Dorothy and Frank, were biologically Joel's children. The other 3 thought Joel was their biological father, when actually their real father had been dead for years before the man they knew came home. But did biology matter? Joel had raised all five, loved all five, been present for all five. Was that not fatherhood? April 15, 1975. Evelyn's editor, Marcus Brennan, called her into his office. "Where's that Victory Day piece? You've had 3 weeks." "I'm still working on it." "What's the holdup?" Evelyn closed the door, sat down. "I found something. Something big. But I don't know if I should publish it." She told him everything. The dead soldier, the identity theft, the widow who knew and said nothing, the 5 children who didn't know their father's real name, the 2 youngest who didn't know their father wasn't their mother's legal husband when they were born. Marcus listened, chain-smoking. When she finished, he stubbed out his cigarette and said, Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then, quote 116, quote 117, quote 118. He lit another cigarette. Quote 119. Evelyn left his office more confused than when she entered. She spent 2 more weeks investigating. She found records of Joel Levinson's family, both parents dead before the war, no siblings, no other relatives. He really had been completely alone in the world. She found evidence of Irene's struggles during the war years, unpaid bills, threatening letters from creditors, a desperate letter to Catholic Charities asking about assistance for her children. She found the widow's pension paperwork filed after Wesley's death was confirmed in 1943. Irene received $42 a month. Even in 1943, that wasn't enough to feed 3 growing boys. She found school records for the Dalton children. Before 1946, the records for Robert and Eugene showed frequent absences, behavioral problems, notes about coming to school hungry. After 1946, the records showed perfect attendance, good grades, participation in sports and clubs. The younger 3 children, Martin, Dorothy, and Frank, had no disciplinary issues at all. The picture became clear. Joel Levinson hadn't just given these children a father, he'd saved their lives. But he'd also committed fraud, forged documents, stolen a dead man's identity, lived as someone else for nearly 3 decades, fathered children while impersonating a dead man. Where did the moral calculus fall? May 1st, 1975. Evelyn made her decision. She went back to the Tasker Street row house. Wesley and Irene both answered the door this time, standing together. They sat in the front room, tense, waiting. Evelyn spoke carefully. "I've decided not to publish the story." The relief on their faces was immediate and profound. Irene's hand went to her throat. Joel closed his eyes. Evelyn continued, Joel said, his voice hoarse. Joel paled. Irene asked quietly. Joel asked. Joel said. Quote 133, quote 134, quote 135, quote 136, quote. They agreed. Quote 137, quote, Evelyn said. Quote 138, quote 139, quote. They both said. 2 weeks later, Joel and Irene called a family meeting. All 5 children came to the house, Robert and Eugene with their wives, Martin with his fiancée, Dorothy, and Frank. Irene made coffee. Joel paced. Finally, everyone was settled in the cramped front room, sitting on every available surface. Joel cleared his throat. Quote 140 __. He told them everything. The letters from the real Wesley, the death in Tunisia on March 18, 1943, Joel Levinson's 3 years in hospitals, the decision to go to Philadelphia, Irene's desperate situation, the choice to become Wesley Dalton. He told them about the real Wesley, the drinking, the violence, the man Robert and Eugene barely remembered, but who had frightened them as small children. He told them how he'd spent 29 years living under another man's name, working at the shipyard, raising 5 children, loving a woman who wasn't legally his wife. The room was silent when he finished. Then Robert spoke, his voice tight. "So you're not my father." "Biologically, no. The man who fathered you, Wesley Raymond Dalton, died in Tunisia in 1943. You were 5 years old. Eugene was 3. Martin was 8 months old. He never knew you boys. Never held Martin at all. You lied to us. For 30 years. Yes. And Mom knew." Robert looked at Irene. Irene spoke up, her voice steady. "I found out after about 6 months. I chose not to say anything." Margaret was crying. "How could you? Both of you?" "Because I had 3 sons to feed and no money to feed them with," Irene said firmly. "Because my real husband was dead and this man," she gestured to Joel, "was alive and willing to be a father. Because he gave us a life we wouldn't have had otherwise." Eugene spoke for the first time. "I remember our father before the war. A little bit. I remember hiding under the bed when he came home drunk. I remember Mama's split lip once. I remember being scared." He looked at Joel. When Dad came home in 46, I wasn't scared anymore. That's all I remember, not being scared." Martin said quietly, "I never knew our real father. The only father I've ever known is sitting right here." He looked at Joel. "You're the one who raised me. You're my dad." Dorothy was shaking. "Wait, if the real Wesley died in 1943 and I was born in 1948. She looked from Irene to Joel. "You're my biological father." "Yes." "And Frank?" "Yes. You and Frank are my children by blood. Robert, Eugene, and Martin are not. But I've loved all 5 of you exactly the same. I swear to God, I have never for 1 second loved you 2 more or them less." Frank stood up, walked to the window. He was 24, the youngest, the baby. He'd grown up with this man as his father, never questioned it, never doubted. Now everything he knew was shifting. "Quote 160 quote," he said. "Quote 161 quote. Quote 162 quote," Joel said. "Quote 163 quote. Quote 164 quote." Frank's voice cracked. "What? Illegitimate? Born to parents who weren't legally married?" "Your parents were married in every way that matters," Evelyn said gently. She'd been sitting quietly in the corner, witnessing. Peter asked the question they were all thinking, Joel said, nodding toward Evelyn. Robert asked. Joel's face was resigned. "That's your choice, all of you. I won't fight it. If you want to turn me in, I'll go peacefully. I've been waiting for this day for 29 years. The room fell silent again. Finally, Robert spoke. "I need time to think. I can't process this right now." The others nodded. They left one by one, some looking back at Joel and Irene, others walking out without a word. Joel and Irene sat alone in the empty room as darkness fell outside. 5 days passed. No word from the children. Joel went to work each day at the shipyard, came home, ate dinner in silence. Irene cleaned the house, cooked, waited. They barely spoke to each other, both lost in their own fears. Then, on May 23rd, Robert called. "We talked, all of us. We want to meet with you and Mom. Tonight, at my place." Joel and Irene arrived at Robert's house in Kensington at 7. All 5 children were there, along with spouses and fiancés. They sat around Robert's dining table, 10 adults crowded together. Robert spoke first. "We've been talking about this for days, fighting about it honestly. We don't all agree on everything, but we came to some conclusions." He looked at Joel. "What you did was wrong, illegal. You lied to us our entire lives. You lied to the government, to the military, to everyone." "I know. But..." Robert's voice softened. Eugene spoke next. Martin nodded. Dorothy wiped her eyes. Frank had been quiet. Now he spoke. Everyone tensed. Joel asked. Robert leaned forward. Eugene added. Joel said. Dorothy said. Frank said. Joel was crying now, silently, tears running down his weathered face. Over the next hours, he told them about his childhood in Pittsburgh. His steelworker father, who died when a beam fell on him. His mother, who worked herself to death trying to raise a son alone. The orphanage where he lived from age 12 to 18. Enlisting in the Army because he had nowhere else to go. He told them about meeting Wesley Dalton in boot camp, how they'd bonded immediately, 2 young men from Pennsylvania, both poor, both hungry for something better. How Wesley had confided in him about his troubled marriage, his fear that he was becoming his own abusive father, his desperate wish to be better. He told them about the letters Wesley had written, giving Joel permission to take his place. About the last letter, written hours before Wesley died, begging Joel to give his sons the father he couldn't be. Joel said. Robert asked. Joel looked around the table at the 5 people he'd raised, 3 who shared none of his blood, 2 who did, at their spouses and fiancés, at the grandchildren playing in the next room. I regret the deception, he said. I regret that you learned the truth this way. But I don't regret giving you a father, even if he wasn't the one you were supposed to have. And I don't regret the life I've built with your mother. Eugene stood, walked around the table, and hugged Joel. You're our dad. That's all that matters. One by one, the others did the same. June 1975. Evelyn's article ran in the Philadelphia Inquirer. ___quote _204 ___. The article mentioned no names, included no photographs. It could have been about anyone. Joel read it and smiled. July 4th, 1976. The Dalton family gathered for a bicentennial barbecue in Robert's backyard. All 5 children, their spouses, 13 grandchildren, 2 great-grandchildren. Joel, still called Wesley by everyone except Irene and the children in private, manned the grill. At 57, his hair was white, his movements slower, but his eyes were clear. Irene sat in a lawn chair, watching the grandchildren run through a sprinkler. She was 59, worn down by hard years but content. Robert came over with a beer for his father. You doing okay, Dad? Never better, son. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the family. I have a question, Robert said, and I want an honest answer. Shoot. If you could go back, knowing everything that would happen, the lie, the guilt, the secret, all of it, would you still do it? Joel thought for a long moment. Then, yes, without hesitation, because it gave me all of you. Robert clinked his beer bottle against his father's. __quote _212 ___. As the sun set over Philadelphia, the family sang __quote _213 off key and laughed and told stories. Joel looked around at the life he'd built, borrowed, stolen, forged from a dead man's name and a desperate choice, and felt something he hadn't felt in 30 years. Peace. December 15th, 1976. Joel woke feeling strange, pressure in his chest. He tried to wake Irene, couldn't get the words out. She woke anyway, saw his face, called an ambulance. At Pennsylvania Hospital, the doctor said, __quote _214 Joel spent 3 weeks in the hospital. The children rotated through, keeping vigil. On January 5th, 1977, he was released with a long list of medications and strict orders to reduce stress and physical activity. That night, lying in bed next to Irene, he said, quote, 215, quote, 216, quote, 217, quote, 218, quote, 219. Irene was quiet. Then, quote, 220, quote, 221, quote, 222. Over the next month, Joel wrote, page after page in his cramped handwriting. Everything. Meeting Wesley in boot camp. The friendship that grew between them. Wesley's troubled marriage and drinking. The letters. The death at Jebel El Guessa. Joel's 3 years in hospitals. The decision to go to Philadelphia. The moment Irene opened the door and called him Wesley. 29 years of living with the weight. He wrote about the nightmares that still came sometimes. Wesley's face in that last moment, the mortar round, the blood. The guilt that never fully faded. The constant fear of discovery, of police knocking on the door, of someone recognizing him as not Wesley. But he also wrote about the good things. Teaching Robert to ride a bike, helping Eugene with his stamp collection, building a treehouse with Martin, walking Dorothy down the aisle at her wedding, watching Frank graduate from college, the first Dalton to do so, holding his grandchildren. The ordinary, precious moments that made the lie worthwhile. He ended with, I know what I did was wrong, illegal, immoral by many standards. I stole a dead man's name and lived as him for 3 decades. I lied to everyone, including the 5 people I loved most in the world. But I also gave 3 boys a father when their real father died. I gave 2 children life and a stable home. I gave a woman a partner who treated her with kindness and respect. Was that worth the lie? I honestly don't know. But I would do it again. God forgive me. I would do it again. Irene wrote too. Her letter was shorter, but no less honest. To our children, and to anyone else who reads this, my husband is not the man whose name he carries, but he is the man who raised our children, who worked himself to exhaustion to keep us fed and clothed, who loved us even when we didn't deserve it, who never once raised his hand to me in anger. I knew the truth for 29 years and said nothing. Judge me for that if you must, but understand, I made the choice that kept my children safe and loved. My first husband, Wesley Dalton, died in Tunisia in March 1943. He was the biological father of Robert, Eugene, and Martin. He was a troubled man who drank and hit me. I mourned him when he died, but I also felt relief. Joel Levinson came to my door in July 1946. He became my husband in every way but legally. He is the biological father of Dorothy and Frank. He is the only father Robert, Eugene, and Martin truly knew. He was, in every meaningful sense, the father of all 5. If Joel Levinson committed a crime by becoming Wesley Dalton, then I am equally guilty for allowing it and participating in it. We stand together in this, as we have in everything else. We do not ask for forgiveness. We do not expect understanding. We simply ask that you remember. We were 2 broken people who found a way to make something whole. Isn't that what everyone is trying to do? With whatever honesty I have left, Irene Dalton, born Brennan, legally married to Wesley Raymond Dalton in 1940, common-law wife to Joel Marcus Levinson from 1946 until death. They sealed the letters in an envelope, put it in a lockbox with their important papers, and gave the key to Evelyn Hartwell. If anything happens to us, Joel told her, and if the truth starts to come out, make sure our children get these letters. Let them know we loved them. Evelyn promised. Joel lived another 14 months. On March 18, 1978, exactly 35 years after Wesley Dalton died in Tunisia, he suffered a massive heart attack while working in the small garden behind the row house. He died before the ambulance arrived. The death certificate read, Wesley Raymond Dalton, age 59, shipyard welder, retired. The obituary in the Philadelphia Inquirer listed his survivors. Wife Irene of 32 years, children Robert, Eugene, Martin, Dorothy, and Frank, 13 grandchildren, 3 great-grandchildren. At the funeral, Evelyn Hartwell stood in the back of the church. She watched the 5 children, now adults themselves, ranging from 40 to 27, grieve for the man who'd raised them. They wept as if their hearts were breaking. Because he had been their father. Whatever name he carried, whoever he'd been before, he had been their father. After the burial at Mount Moriah Cemetery, Evelyn approached Irene. The older woman stood alone by the grave, the March wind whipping her black coat.
"I'm so sorry, Mrs. Dalton."
Irene's eyes were dry. She'd done her crying in private. "Thank you for keeping your word, for letting him die in peace, with his real name on his lips at the end." His real name? In the ambulance, before he died, he said, "I'm Joel. Tell them I'm Joel." The paramedics thought he was confused, but I knew. After 32 years of being Wesley, he wanted to die as himself. Evelyn felt tears prick her eyes. Did anyone else hear? Just me. And I told the paramedics he was confused from the pain. One last lie to protect him. Why didn't you let him be Joel? On the death certificate, I mean. Because Wesley Dalton is who the world knew. Wesley Dalton is who our children grew up with. Wesley Dalton is who deserves to be on that gravestone next to where I'll be buried someday. She looked at Evelyn. But I know the truth. God knows the truth. And someday our children will read the letters and they'll know too. I almost published the story, Evelyn admitted, even after I promised not to. There were times I thought about it. Why didn't you? Because I realized something. The truth doesn't always set you free. Sometimes it just destroys. And there's been enough destruction in the world. Your husband, both of them, in a way, fought in a war full of destruction. What he built afterward was the opposite of that. Why would I tear it down? Irene squeezed her hand. Thank you. Irene lived another year and a half. She died September 14th, 1979, quietly in her sleep. Heart failure, the doctor said, but her children knew better. She died of a broken heart, of missing the man who'd been her companion for 33 years. They buried her next to Joel. The gravestone read, quote, 243, quote. After the funeral, Evelyn gave Robert the lockbox, quote, 244, quote. Robert took it, puzzled, quote, 245, quote, quote, 246, quote. That evening, the 5 Dalton children gathered at Robert's house. They opened the lockbox together, pulled out the letters. They read in silence, passing the pages between them. When they finished, no one spoke for a long time. Finally, Dorothy said, "He wrote this just after his heart attack, a year before he died. He was still carrying all of this, still afraid." "Mom, too," Frank said, holding Irene's letter. Martin said quietly. Eugene shook his head. Robert stood, walked to the window. Quote, 252. Quote, quote, 253. Quote, Dorothy said firmly. Quote, 254. Quote. Catherine, Martin's wife, spoke up. But what about legally? What about the truth? The truth is complicated, Frank said. Legally, Dorothy and I are bastards, born to parents who weren't married. Legally, our father was a fraud and our mother was complicit. Legally, a lot of things that don't matter in the real world. He looked around at his siblings. But in the real world, we had 2 parents who loved each other and loved us. That's the truth that matters. They sat together for hours, talking, crying, laughing at memories of the man who'd taught them to fish, to drive, to face the world with courage. Before they left, Robert said, quote, 259, quote. The others agreed. Years passed. The Dalton children aged, had more grandchildren. Robert died in 2008 at age 70. Eugene in 2011 at age 71. Martin in 2016 at age 74. Dorothy in 2019 at age 71. Frank lived the longest. In 2020, at age 69, as the pandemic swept through Philadelphia, he called his eldest son, Thomas, to his bedside. Quote, 260, quote, he said. Quote, 261, quote. He told Thomas the whole story, about Joel Levinson and Wesley Dalton, about the letters, about the secret his parents had carried, about the choice Irene made to stay silent. Thomas asked. Frank smiled. Thomas wrote it all down. He put Frank's story, along with the letters from Joel and Irene, into a safe deposit box at the bank. Sometimes he takes them out and reads them, thinking about the strange turns life takes, about how a man can die in Tunisia and somehow still raise 5 children in Philadelphia, about how love can cross identity, how family can be chosen as much as inherited. Epilogue. In 2024, a graduate student at the University of Pennsylvania named Marcus Chen was researching World War II veterans for his dissertation. He pulled casualty records from the National Archives. He found the file for Wesley Raymond Dalton, killed March 18, 1943. 2 witnesses listed, Horace Pritchard and Joel Levinson. Out of curiosity, he cross-referenced those witnesses. Horace Pritchard, killed June 8, 1944 at Normandy. Joel Levinson, discharged August 1946. No post-discharge address on file. Marcus noticed something odd. In the VA database, there was a Wesley Dalton from Philadelphia who drew benefits until 1978. But the casualty report clearly stated Wesley Dalton died in 1943. He flagged it for his advisor, Professor Elizabeth Warren. She looked at both files. Clerical error, probably. The war created chaos in record-keeping. This kind of mistake happened all the time. Someone with a similar name, records got mixed up. Should I investigate further? Professor Warren considered it. To what end? If there was a mistake, the people involved are long dead. If there wasn't a mistake, well, those people are still long dead. What would you accomplish by exposing it now? Marcus shrugged. You're right. I'll make a note of the discrepancy and move on. He closed the files and returned them to the archives. And so the secret remained buried, known only to a handful of descendants who kept it close. In South Philadelphia, if you walk past Tasker Street, you'll see the row house where the Daltons lived. Different people live there now. The street has gentrified, row houses selling for prices Irene and Joel could never have imagined. But sometimes, late at night, neighbors say they hear an old man's voice humming a wartime song. They dismiss it as pipes creaking or wine through the alley. Maybe it is. Or maybe it's Joel Levinson, finally at peace, watching over the family he built from borrowed bones and desperate love. Maybe it's Wesley Dalton, grateful that someone did what he couldn't, raised his children right. Or maybe it's both of them together, 2 men who became one, sharing eternity the way they shared a name. The truth is gone now, dissolved into time. All that remains is a gravestone, some letters in a safe deposit box, and the descendants of 5 children who never quite knew whose blood ran in their veins. But they knew whose love did, and in the end, isn't that all that matters?